The restaurant was glowing that night, a soft golden light spilling from chandeliers, polished marble floors gleaming beneath black dress shoes. Crystal glasses clinked softly, laughter rolled through the air, and the smell of seared steak mingled with expensive perfume. It was one of those places where silence was considered cheap and arrogance was the dress code. At the center table sat Mr. Grant, a self-made tech millionaire whose voice carried farther than anyone else's. He was surrounded by his business partners, men who laughed at every word he said, whether it was funny or not. He wore his success like armor, tailored navy suit, Rolex flashing under the dim lights, and a smug smile that had convinced too many people he was clever. "Gentlemen," he said, swirling his wine, "you can tell a lot about a person from how they order dinner." The table chuckled. One man asked, "How's that, Grant?" "Well," Grant said, "watch this." A waitress approached, young, polite, focused. She wore the restaurant's black and white uniform, her name tag slightly scratched, Aisha. Her eyes carried calmness, though her shoulders told stories of long shifts and endless demands. "Good evening, sir." "Welcome back," she said softly. "Would you like to start with your usual?" Grant leaned back in his chair. "Actually, no," he replied, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Let's make this interesting." He raised his glass and smirked. "I'll give anyone in this restaurant $100,000 if they can order in Chinese." His friends roared with laughter. The bartender froze mid-pour. Two waiters exchanged looks. The manager, standing near the kitchen, exhaled sharply. It was the kind of joke that felt less like humor and more like a dare, a rich man's game meant to remind everyone of their place. Aisha kept her composure. She'd heard worse. She'd worked here long enough to know that sometimes, people used cruelty to fill the silence inside them. Still, something inside her stirred. "Would you like me to take your order, sir?" she asked calmly. Grant laughed. "You? Sweetheart, I was talking about real languages, not, whatever you speak at home." His friends howled again. Aisha's face didn't change, but her eyes dimmed for a moment. Then, she smiled, not the fake, customer service kind, but a patient one. "Understood, sir," she said, voice steady. "But may I ask, what would you like to order?" Grant leaned forward. "You tell me. You speak Chinese?" Aisha paused, setting her notepad on the table. The room quieted slightly. Conversations around them softened as curious eyes turned their way. Then, softly, she replied in perfect Mandarin. "Sir, what would you like to order?" The laughter stopped. Grant blinked, confused. "What did you just say?" She repeated it clearer this time, her tone precise, her pronunciation flawless. The other waiters froze. One of the businessmen lowered his fork mid-bite. Grant forced a chuckle. "Cute trick. Probably memorized that line off TikTok." Aisha tilted her head slightly. "Would you prefer Cantonese, sir?" she asked, then switched dialects effortlessly. The air thickened. Somewhere in the back, a glass shattered. No one laughed now. Her Mandarin had rhythm, fluency, not memorized words, but real confidence. The kind that only comes from years of learning, of discipline, of knowing exactly how people underestimate you. Grant shifted in his chair. All right," he muttered. "You made your point." But she wasn't done. With quiet grace, she continued in French. Then Spanish. Then Arabic. Each phrase carried the same calm certainty, the same invisible authority that silenced the room. The restaurant, once filled with chatter, now stood in reverent stillness. Even the music seemed to fade. When she finally returned to English, she smiled. "Would you like me to write that down, sir?" Grant's mouth opened but no sound came out. His partners stared at her, wide-eyed. The manager stepped closer, unsure whether to intervene or applaud. And then a moment no one expected, one of the diners began clapping. Slow. Loud. Certain. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted in applause for the young waitress who had just turned humiliation into power. Aisha bowed slightly, a humble gesture that somehow made her even more commanding. Grant stared at her, half amused, half ashamed. He forced a laugh to mask the red spreading up his neck. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "looks like I owe someone 100 grand. Aisha's smile softened. "No, sir. You don't owe me anything." She picked up her notepad again. "Respect will do just fine." For a long moment, no one spoke. The applause faded, replaced by quiet awe. And though she walked back toward the kitchen, her presence lingered like a ripple across the room, unshakable, undeniable. Grant looked down at his untouched wine, seeing his reflection in it for the first time that night. The man who thought he could buy intelligence had just met something money couldn't touch. As Aisha disappeared behind the kitchen doors, whispers filled the restaurant. "Who is she?" someone asked. "Just the waitress," another replied. But Mr. Grant knew better. He'd mocked her to prove a point and lost to a woman who didn't even raise her voice. That night, the millionaire laughed at the waitress. But by the next morning, her name would be on every tongue in every language he never learned to respect. The video hit the internet before sunrise. One of the diners had uploaded it to TikTok, a minute-long clip titled, "Millionaire Mocks Black Waitress. What she does next stuns everyone." By 7 a.m., it had 500,000 views. By noon, it crossed 3 million. The restaurant's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters called, bloggers wanted interviews, and strangers showed up just to see the multilingual waitress. Aisha didn't even know. She was on her way to her morning shift, earbuds in, eyes half closed from lack of sleep, listening to her old Mandarin lessons on repeat. When she reached the restaurant, she noticed everyone staring. The manager rushed over. "Aisha, you're on the news." She blinked. "What?" He turned his phone toward her. There she was, her own face on screen, calm, confident, speaking 9 languages while a roomful of rich men gawked. The caption read, "Respect has no accent." She felt her chest tighten. "Oh no," she whispered. "I didn't want." But before she could finish, a co-worker interrupted. "Girl, you're a legend. You made that guy look like a fool." Aisha smiled faintly, embarrassed. She hadn't done it to humiliate anyone. She had just spoken. Still, part of her wondered maybe it was time people finally listened. That afternoon, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something told her to pick up. "Hello." A familiar voice on the other end. Hesitant. Careful. "Aisha? This is Grant." She froze. "Mr. Grant?" "Yes. Listen, I saw the video. You were extraordinary." She stayed quiet. He continued, words slower now, stripped of arrogance. "You embarrassed me, but I deserved it. I realize now how small I sounded that night. I wanted to call and say, thank you." She didn't expect that. Gratitude from him felt stranger than anger. He went on, "I've been thinking about what you said about respect and intelligence. You were right. Money doesn't buy wisdom." Aisha finally spoke, her voice calm but steady. "You didn't need to call me for that, sir." "I didn't just call to apologize," he said. "I have an offer." That caught her off guard. "I run a language tech startup. We're developing an AI translation app. I've got investors, coders, marketers, but not one person who actually speaks 9 languages." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering me a job?" "Yes," he said. Head of Multilingual Development. Full salary, full credit. You deserve a stage bigger than a restaurant floor. Aisha didn't answer right away. She thought about her parents, her father's voice teaching her patience, her mother's smile when she first spoke Mandarin. Then she thought of Malik, her brother, still struggling through college. She finally said, "Send me the details. I'll think about it." 2 weeks later, she walked into the glass-walled offices of LinguaLink, Grant's company. The same man who once mocked her now stood to greet her with genuine respect. He extended a hand. "Welcome aboard, Miss Mensah." Aisha hesitated, then shook it. "Thank you, sir." And, it's Aisha. The work was challenging: long meetings, late nights, endless brainstorming sessions. But for the first time, her knowledge wasn't a secret. It was her power. She led translation teams, trained AI on rare dialects, and built a system that could translate empathy as much as words. Her name began appearing in magazines: the Waitress who revolutionized language tech. Universities invited her to speak. TV shows called her a symbol of modern resilience. But Aisha never let it change her. She still rode the same bus to work. Still sent half her paycheck to Malik. Still whispered goodnight in her parents' languages every evening. One day, while walking through the office, she noticed Mr. Grant staring at a framed photo on his desk, a picture of his own daughter. "You were right that night," he said softly without looking up. "About what?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Respect. I've been rich for years, but I never truly felt wealthy until I started listening to people smarter than me." Aisha nodded. "You'd be surprised how many of those people are the ones we overlook." He chuckled. "Trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way." Months passed. LinguaLink launched globally. Their translation AI broke barriers across schools, hospitals, and refugee centers. And at the launch event, the keynote speaker wasn't Grant. It was Aisha. Standing beneath bright lights, she began her speech in English, then shifted seamlessly into Mandarin, then Swahili, then Arabic. The crowd erupted, cheering. And when she returned to English, her voice carried across the hall, filled with quiet conviction. "When I was a waitress, people spoke at me. Tonight, the world is speaking with me." That's the difference language makes. It's not just words, it's respect. That night, as the applause faded and the cameras turned away, Aisha stepped outside, gazing up at the stars. She whispered softly in Shui, "Baba, Mama, I kept my promise." And in the quiet wind, she thought she heard her father's voice again, proud, warm, echoing through the night. "You didn't just learn languages, my girl. You taught the world how to listen." Never measure someone's worth by what they wear, where they work, or how they speak. The next person you overlook might be fluent in a language you'll spend your whole life trying to understand. Respect.